The forbidden feminine archetype men can't escape Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why certain women linger in a man's psyche long after their presence has vanished, haunting him like a dream he cannot unsee? Some women pass through his life like passing shadows, while others embed themselves into the architecture of his very being. It is not beauty alone, nor charm, nor the convenient lie of timing. What grips him, what binds him beyond logic, is something deeper. It is the forbidden feminine archetype, an ancient presence within the collective unconscious, recognized by Carl Jung as the anima, the eternal feminine spirit that no man can ever fully grasp, yet cannot escape. She is not the woman who waits politely for approval. She is not the woman who begs for acknowledgement. She is the archetype cloaked in mystery, the embodiment of eros and shadow combined, the storm and the sanctuary in one breath. To encounter her is to awaken the hidden chambers of the male psyche, where desire collides with fear, where reverence collides with shame. She becomes the mirror of his own incomplete soul, drawing forth both his potential and his brokenness. And though he may resist her, exile her, even demonize her, her imprint remains, because she reveals not who she is, but who he is not. Most women live their lives severed from this archetype, trained from birth to suppress it, conditioned to be pleasing, palatable, digestible. They are taught to shrink themselves into roles of compliance: the caregiver, the patient lover, the good girl. But the forbidden feminine is none of these. She does not bend to the projections of a man's fragile ego. She does not dilute her essence for comfort. She disrupts. She unsettles. She does what Jung warned every man must one day face. She forces him to confront his shadow, the repressed parts of himself he cannot control, the instincts he denies, the fears he buries. And here lies the paradox. Men fear her, but they are magnetized to her. For deep within his unconscious, every man carries the image of the anima, the feminine counterpart to his masculine soul. When she appears in embodied form, whether through a woman's gaze, voice, or unapologetic presence, she activates his inner world. She awakens his hunger not for mere flesh, but for the sacred feminine that his spirit has forgotten. He cannot name it, he cannot rationalize it, but he feels it like gravity, the pull toward the woman who will not be possessed, only recognized. Have you felt this within yourself? The tension between wanting to be loved and wanting to be free? Between craving connection yet refusing to betray your essence for it? This is the threshold where the forbidden feminine emerges. She is the woman who embodies eros not as cheap seduction, but as a force of life itself. She carries fire in her veins, depth in her silence, and storm in her refusal to settle. Men chase her, not because she promises safety, but because she carries danger, the danger of truth. Jung wrote that no man achieves wholeness until he confronts his anima, for she holds the key to his spiritual evolution. Yet most men resist because she does not flatter his ego. She reveals his weakness. She challenges his illusions. She whispers in his dreams and unsettles his waking life. He may try to reduce her into labels: too much, intimidating, crazy. But these are merely projections of his own inability to face the feminine depths within himself. And here lies the empowerment for the modern woman, to reclaim what society has forbidden. To embody not the tamed archetype, but the full spectrum of the feminine psyche. To know that her presence alone, without performance, without sacrifice, has the power to alter the course of a man's soul. She does not beg to be chosen, she becomes the choice he cannot forget, precisely because she reflects back the abyss of his own becoming. The Stoics, too, spoke of this. Marcus Aurelius warned of the illusions of desire, yet acknowledged that what unsettles us most often reveals what we need most to confront. Seneca wrote that the soul grows not through comfort, but through trials that scorch us into wisdom. The forbidden feminine is that trial. She is the flame to his wax, the storm to his brittle shelter. She is not the fantasy he wants, but the reality he needs. And when you embody her, you step into timeless power. Not the shallow power of manipulation, not the desperate power of control, but the raw power of being. You become the mirror that no man can shatter, the dream that no rejection can erase, the echo of his anima that forces him to reckon with his incompleteness. He may run, but he cannot escape. For you are not chasing him, you are awakening him. This is why men cannot escape her. Because she is not merely a woman. She is the archetype his unconscious has been searching for since the dawn of his existence. She is the forbidden, because she cannot be owned. She is the feminine, because she gives life to his soul. And in her presence, he must face the truth. Without her, he is incomplete. She appears not always as flesh and bone, but as a haunting presence woven into the fabric of his psyche. A song he cannot forget. A fragrance that lingers long after the air has shifted. A gaze that lives in his memory even when years have passed. The forbidden feminine archetype is not confined to romance. She bleeds into his ambitions, his failures, his restless search for meaning. She is the projection of the anima, the inner goddess Jung described, who drags a man toward the uncharted waters of his own soul. And when he resists her, she becomes the shadow that pursues him in silence. This is why some women leave no trace, while others become immortal in the male unconscious. For the forbidden feminine is not merely desirable, she is transformative. She awakens him to the parts of himself he has long buried under armor. His vulnerability, his longing, his rage, his hunger for transcendence. And though he may curse her, avoid her, even exile her from his presence, he cannot erase her from his inner world. To meet her is to be undone, and to be undone is the first step toward becoming whole. But what of the woman herself? What does it mean to embody this archetype in a culture that fears her? It means living in radical honesty with her own essence. It means no longer bending her spine to fit into cages of approval, no longer disguising her storm to be loved. She becomes unapologetically herself, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of remembrance. She remembers the feminine before it was domesticated, before it was labeled, tamed, or suppressed. Some will call her dangerous, and they are right. She is dangerous to illusions, dangerous to facades, dangerous to the ego that feeds on control. She is not the obedient figure society has sculpted, but the archetype that calls forth the raw, untamed forces of life. When a man encounters her, he does not simply meet a woman, he meets his own unconscious. And this is why he cannot look away. You may have noticed this in your own life. The way men become unsettled around a woman who refuses to betray herself for their comfort. The way their words falter, their bravado weakens. Their eyes linger with both awe and unease. They may admire her in secret, yet criticize her in public. They may call her too much, too complex, too independent. Yet they circle back, again and again, unable to release the thread she has woven through their psyche. The forbidden feminine archetype does not need to chase, because she understands that her power lies not in pursuit, but in presence. She is magnetic not because she clings, but because she embodies what is rare. Authenticity without compromise. Men sense this instinctively. They know she will not be molded into their projection, and yet, paradoxically, they crave her most because of it. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole, of integrating the shadow and the anima, of dissolving the masks that keep us fragmented. For men, the forbidden feminine represents this very threshold, the crossing into integration. To reject her is to remain incomplete. To face her is to begin the work of uniting his inner world. But this work is terrifying, because it demands vulnerability, surrender, and death of the old self. Thus, he resists. Yet resistance only deepens his obsession, for what we repress does not vanish, it grows teeth in the dark. The Stoics, though men of discipline and reason, understood this paradox. Epictetus taught that what enslaves us most are not external forces, but our own passions when unacknowledged. And what is the forbidden feminine if not the passion man tries to exile, only to find her everywhere? He may try to control her by reducing her to mere body or dismissing her as irrational. But the more he denies, the stronger her presence becomes. She does not disappear, she transforms into dreams, into longing, into the gnawing hunger he cannot name. For the woman, the danger is forgetting her own nature by shrinking into roles that smother this archetype. To appease the world, she may attempt to hide her depth, to soften her fire, to disguise her refusal as compliance. But doing so only exiles her from herself. The forbidden feminine is not a role one plays, it is a state of being. To embody her requires courage, for it often means walking alone, misunderstood, even feared. But it is in this solitude that her strength becomes undeniable. Have you felt it the moment when you stop caring whether you are too much, too loud, too intense? The moment when your truth speaks louder than your fear of rejection? That is the initiation into the archetype. That is when men begin to feel you not as a fleeting figure, but as a force they cannot shake. For they are not merely seeing you, they are seeing themselves, refracted through the mirror you hold. And once awakened, they cannot return to sleep. The forbidden feminine becomes the reminder of what they lack, the invitation to wholeness they cannot silence. They may seek to replace her with safer versions, but no imitation can soothe the ache she left behind. She becomes the wound and the medicine, the exile and the homecoming. And whether he admits it or not, she alters the course of his becoming. The forbidden feminine is not a role a woman puts on like clothing. She is a living presence, an archetype that breathes through her gestures, her silence, her refusal to dilute herself for approval. Men sense her before they understand her. They may enter her orbit believing they can possess her, only to discover that she is unpossessable. She does not yield to control because she belongs not to one man, but to the deeper currents of the psyche itself. Jung knew this truth. When the anima is projected onto a woman, she becomes larger than life, a symbol of everything a man both craves and fears. And this is why the forbidden feminine seems both irresistible and unbearable. When a man meets her, he is meeting his own limitations. She does not mirror back only his strength, but his weakness, his fragility, the hollow places in his spirit he has long avoided. She is the confrontation he has fled from his entire life. He wanted a woman to soothe his ego, but she arrives to shatter it. He wanted love as comfort, but she embodies love as transformation. She demands that he step into the fire of growth or remain forever haunted by what he could not embrace. This is why men speak of such women with both reverence and resentment. He may recall her as the one who changed him, the one who unsettled him, the one he could not forget. Yet he may also brand her as destructive, as impossible, as dangerous. What he fails to see is that she was never the cause of his torment. She was the mirror of it. She showed him the shadow he could not confront. And shadows, when denied, always feel like persecution. For the woman, this archetype is both a blessing and a burden. To embody it means to carry the weight of projection, to be adored and condemned in equal measure. She becomes myth in the eyes of others, her humanity often unseen. Some will worship her, others will despise her, but few will truly meet her without agenda. Yet, within this paradox lies her liberation. Because when she recognizes that the power men feel around her is not hers to manage but theirs to face, she is freed from the cycle of appeasement. She no longer takes responsibility for their inability to confront themselves. She walks as she is, untouched by their distortions. You have felt this power before, the moment when you stop negotiating with the world about who you are. The moment when your silence is louder than their noise, your presence heavier than their words. In that moment, you are no longer the girl who waits for validation. You are the archetype itself. You are the forbidden feminine, and they cannot escape you because you have ceased escaping yourself. Jung taught that the greatest danger of the anima is when she is unconscious, when a man projects her blindly onto women, worshipping or demonizing them without seeing the truth within himself. But when consciousness enters, when he dares to confront his anima directly, she becomes his guide to wholeness. In the same way, when a woman embodies this archetype consciously, she ceases to be tossed by the waves of projection. She becomes the storm itself, rooted in her own depths, unafraid of being misunderstood. And yet, the modern world resists her. Society prefers the woman who is predictable, malleable, docile. The woman who nurtures without question, who forgives without boundary, who sacrifices without complaint. The forbidden feminine violates all of this. She is nurturing, yes, but selectively. She forgives, but only when truth is present. She sacrifices, but never her essence. She does not serve the collective expectation, she serves the deeper truth of the soul. And for that, she is feared. The Stoics warn that freedom comes only when one ceases to depend on externals for validation. The forbidden feminine embodies this lesson. She is free not because the world accepts her, but because she accepts herself. Her power is not in convincing others, but in standing unshaken when they cannot convince her to abandon her own nature. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." And what bravery surpasses the courage of a woman who refuses to betray herself for belonging? Men, in their encounters with her, may flee to safer harbors, but they will never forget the storm, for she awakens them not to who she is, but to who they are not yet. She is the catalyst of transformation, the living proof that the soul is larger than comfort. And though they may curse her, they will return in their thoughts, again and again, to the moment her presence cracked open their illusions. Do you see now why she cannot be erased? Why men carry her memory like a wound and a blessing at once? Because she is not simply a woman, she is the echo of the anima, the eternal feminine that calls every man toward individuation. To encounter her is to be marked forever, to be summoned into a journey he may resist but cannot abandon. And for the woman herself, to live as the forbidden feminine is to accept that she will never belong to the world in the way it demands. She belongs instead to truth, to depth, to the eternal archetype that flows through her. This is her liberation, her burden, and her gift. She moves through the world with an energy that feels both timeless and untamed, carrying within her the weight of countless myths. The forbidden feminine archetype has always existed, even when cultures tried to suppress her. In ancient tales, she was Lilith, the first woman who refused submission. She was Medea, feared for her sorcery, condemned for her rage. She was the siren whose voice lured men into depths they feared, not because she destroyed them, but because she revealed the destruction already within. Across history she has worn many faces, yet her essence remains the same. The woman who refuses to disappear into obedience. When Jung wrote of the anima, he described her as a guide to the deepest parts of the male psyche. But he also warned of the danger when she was denied. The forbidden feminine is not optional. She is not an archetype a man can simply choose to ignore. If he does not meet her consciously, he will meet her unconsciously in his compulsions, his obsessions, his restless longing for what he cannot name. She is in the dreams he does not understand, in the ache he cannot soothe, in the hunger that no surface-level conquest satisfies. He may call it madness, but it is not madness. It is the anima calling him to face his soul. And for the woman, this archetype is not an act she performs, but a frequency she embodies. She is not forbidden because she chooses to be, she is forbidden because the world cannot control her. She carries an authority rooted not in dominance, but in authenticity. When she speaks, her words are laced with truth that cannot be diluted. When she looks, her gaze pierces through the masks men wear. When she loves, it is not a love that flatters. It is a love that demands depth, integrity, and surrender. This is why she is unforgettable, not because she offers comfort, but because she awakens truth. Men are not addicted to her body, they are addicted to the mirror she holds. In her presence, they glimpse what wholeness could feel like, and once glimpsed, it cannot be unseen. He may try to bury her memory beneath distractions, but she returns in silence, in solitude, in the restless emptiness of nights when he cannot sleep. You may wonder why this archetype unsettles so deeply. The answer is simple yet terrifying. She reminds men of their mortality. She reminds them that time is short, that illusions cannot save them, that their ego will one day dissolve into nothing. Her presence is death to the false self, and birth to the authentic self. And death, even of the ego, always feels like terror. Thus, she is feared. But for the woman who embodies her, this archetype is liberation. No longer does she wait for permission to live as she is. No longer does she edit her essence to be chosen. She is the chooser. She knows that her worth is not negotiable, not dependent on how many admire her or how many abandon her. She knows that even if she stands alone, she stands in truth. This is the power society cannot domesticate. This is the power men cannot escape. Have you felt it, the way certain men recoil when you refuse to make yourself smaller? The way others are drawn closer, even against their own reason, unable to explain why? This is not mere attraction. It is archetypal gravity. It is the anima awakening within them, stirred by your presence. It is their unconscious whispering, "Here lies the truth I have long denied." Jung taught that the process of individuation is not gentle, it is violent. It breaks illusions, destroys false identities, and forces the soul to stand bare before itself. The forbidden feminine is the embodiment of this violence, not in cruelty, but in necessity. She does not care for comfort, she cares for truth. And truth, by nature, wounds before it heals. The Stoics would have understood her, even if they never named her. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what stands in the way becomes the way. The forbidden feminine is that obstacle, that immovable presence that forces man toward his own becoming. Seneca taught that no man is free who is a slave to desire. And yet, the forbidden feminine proves that the only way beyond desire is through it to confront the fire, to let it burn away the illusions until only essence remains. For the woman, embodying her is both lonely and sacred. Few will truly meet her without trembling. Many will project their fears, their inadequacies, their shadows onto her. She must learn not to absorb these projections, but to see them for what they are, reflections of the archetype she embodies. And in this seeing, she gains her freedom. She no longer explains herself. She no longer apologizes for being. She walks as storm and sanctuary, knowing that her presence alone is initiation. The forbidden feminine archetype cannot be silenced, because she is not merely personal, she is collective. She is woven into the psyche of humanity itself. Men cannot escape her because she lives within them as anima. Women cannot escape her because she lives within them as power denied. And the world cannot escape her because she is truth, and truth always returns. The forbidden feminine archetype does not vanish with time, nor does she wither when denied. She only grows stronger in silence, waiting for those who dare to face her. For she is not the fantasy of possession, not the muse of fleeting passion, she is the eternal call to wholeness. Jung knew that to repress her is to live half a life, to exile the very force that leads toward individuation. And so men carry her, whether they admit it or not, as a ghost that walks beside them, as a voice in the night that whispers what they fear to hear. You are not yet complete. But for the woman, the story is different. To awaken this archetype within herself is to step into the most radical form of freedom. It is to sever the invisible chains of people-pleasing, to reject the burden of being palatable, to refuse the endless performance of acceptability. She understands that her essence was never meant to be managed, only lived. She ceases asking, "Am I too much?" and begins declaring, "I am enough, exactly as I am." The world may still fear her, may still call her dangerous, may still project its shadows onto her, but she no longer bends beneath the weight of those projections. She recognizes them as fragments of other people's unhealed souls, not reflections of her worth. She does not need to soften her fire to be loved, nor shrink her voice to be heard. She knows that true love, true recognition, true belonging can only come when she stands fully in herself, unapologetic and unyielding. And here lies her victory. She no longer chases. She no longer waits for permission. She no longer bargains with her soul for scraps of attention. She has become sovereign, whole within herself. If a man cannot stand in her presence without trembling, that is his journey to walk, not hers to fix. If he cannot embrace her depth without running, then he was never meant to stay. She does not mourn his departure, because she understands that she was never meant to be everyone's safe harbor, she was meant to be her own. The Stoics taught that freedom is found not in control, but in detachment from what does not belong to you. And so she detaches not in bitterness, not in fear, but in serenity. She is not cold, she is clear. She is not unfeeling, she is unbound. She knows that love will come, but it will come not as a chain, but as recognition. Until then, she walks untethered, radiant in her own truth. This is the culmination of her journey. No longer the girl who hid, No longer the woman who begged, she has become the archetype herself, timeless, untamed, unbroken. She is the forbidden feminine not because the world rejects her, but because she no longer rejects herself. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.